welcome Amy to this conversation about co-creating the third attractor.
Thank you for having me. It's as I yeah, I've mentioned to you, it's I'm delighted to be here with you and excited about our conversation to come.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting how these conversations come about. Like with you, it was just a spontaneous feeling when we had this third attractor live conversations with the whole group that I felt like you would have a lot to say about this topic. So why not just invite you in and I also love to talk to people that I don't know yet, like where there is really everything is kind of hidden and we can pull out in our conversation. So that's really
It's
cool. So thank you
it's
for being here.
I love that you've said that because I feel like that is a part of this thing that we're dealing with is just the curiosity to be interested in the other being anybody. That I mean, I have done this for years, like been really curious about difference, about
Mhm.
why is that person like who they are, and how did they become that way, and what's inside them, what kind of magic do they have for me, and when you just discover the magic inside other people, you just want more, and there's billions of people out there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
it's on so many levels. It's enlightening, it's humbling, it's perspective shifting. There's just so much. And I think that you really get a sense of why it is that we're in this predicament that we are facing at the moment. I mean, so many reasons, but when you hear people's stories and you can hear, and it's interesting, I've kind of I like to try and like I have a process called the pause to puzzle process that is really about problem solving. I've been a problem solver forever. Just wanted
Hmm.
to figure out what's going on, and if I see some, and it's probably because relatively empathetic person, and I don't like seeing people suffering or things
Hmm.
suffering, animals, and so when there's a problem, I really want to get involved, and I do it in pretty much any setting. um, I want to be able to help, and I want to be able to contribute. I'm a capable, able-bodied, relatively intelligent human being that has capacity to contribute in a way that maybe that other people don't have access to, or in the moment I can help. So I'm going to do what I can, and yeah, just being able to engage with that, like the problem solving is pausing and zooming out is a really, really valuable thing to do. And I
Hmm.
mean, the process itself is about, it can be in the moment when you pause, you can breathe, you can hold, you can stop yourself from reacting and making things worse. But in the big picture stuff, you're like, let's just hold on a second and see what else is here. And when you zoom out, you can distance yourself from getting involved with the emotions that may be, coming up for you in relation to any particular part of the problem that you are exploring or looking at, observing. And I feel like that zooming out is really good because there's so much more to everything that we are dealing with than I think that we generally um, engage with. And I mean, there's so many, once again, there are so many reasons, like we've got the attention economy, we've got technology, we've got increased mental load of humans and physical load and all of the things that are contributing. And there's so many contributing factors. And I think when you see that it's so complex, and I mean, everybody knows it's complex, but you can see that it's going to take a whole lot of things to figure it all out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and we can't take any one approach, and we can't. And so I kind of like, okay, well then what can we do? What are the lowest common denominator? I'm really interested in, like, I just feel like we really need to simplify it and kind of we've got frameworks, and we've got, human thriving and planetary thriving and economic thriving, or all of these different factors that are kind of competing for attention and for resources, in a way that's actually detracting from the potential actual outcomes that could be achieved if we were a little bit more, I don't know, clever and or just strategic in the way that we approach things. And so that's the way I kind of come to most problems is like, well, what are the different ways, what do I need to know about this particular person, this situation, this setting, this culture, this place, that are going to influence my opportunity to change things for the better, or this person's opportunity to change things for themselves, or and every one of those situations is entirely unique. Coming back to
Hmm.
what we were saying about people, like everybody is dealing with a whole lot of different things, and I think
Hmm.
there's this kind of unfortunate and kind of I don't think we're as a populace of the people. Um, very aware of the fact that we make assumptions about the fact that we assume that everybody knows what we know. I mean, we know it, so why would they not know it? It could be simple, it could be complex, but that actually there's not necessarily been a pathway for anybody else to that particular place that we have got to,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we have our unique journey on the planet that has genetics, physiology, anatomy, upbringing, inputs, education, decisions, traumas, challenges, like so many things that have brought every one of the people on the planet to us today, and that's wonderful and incredibly complex.
yeah, yeah.
Do you, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
No,
So yeah,
that makes total sense, and I was just thinking what you call pause, I would probably call listening, like this quality of deep listening is kind of at the beginning and end of all we try to do here together. When we speak about co-creating the third attractor, that's kind of my not yet final assessment, but my intermediate assessment that it has a lot to do with our ability to listen deeply, and that's what you are describing. Like if we want to be able to solve challenges, we have to understand them first, and that means we have to listen first, and listening not just to words that are being spoken, but listening to the depths of what wants to emerge and what wants to change. No.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree with you. However, I believe that there are a few steps before that, and that zooming out is really important because it takes us out of the complexity of it a little bit, and observing. Just
Hmm.
observe what's happening here.
Hmm.
Just look at it. Just look at what's happening and just observe it with no judgment. Just see. And when you pay attention, like, all of a sudden you see. And I mean, there's lots of studies and about what we pay attention to and the way that our brains are designed to focus on the most important things because of the setting that we're in or whatever. And there's lots of things that we are not paying attention to and not noticing
Yeah, yeah.
because we're caught up in where our head is at often. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges. While we are the most evolved species on the planet, this very complex, you know, cerebral, beautiful thing that we have in our head, makes things really complicated,
Hmm.
the intellectualization of all of the things is actually part of the problem. Like we put extra words on, and then words adds another layer of complexity and
Yeah, yeah,
potential for misunderstanding.
yeah.
I've got a series of simple reflection books, that I'm writing. I've published two of them, Quest and
Mm.
Possibilities, and one of them is called Words, and it is purely about, like, what happens if we don't read them the same, or we don't feel the same way about them, or we make the assumption that somebody else understands the same words that we say, as if we have said what they mean. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And we can't make that assumption. So being able to just hold that knowledge in our listening is so important, and listening, that's where you start to really get that. When you listen, you hear there's a difference. You're like, oh, right, I've said this and you think that. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, it's really interesting. So the pause, observe, and then but the pause part of this is so important, because just stopping, we don't stop.
Yeah.
We don't stop. We just react. We just, and so our nervous systems are already primed by all of the things, you know, whether it be the news or our children or our work or and I mean, I have to say, I'm probably going to make some sweeping generalizations, particularly about the Western culture, because that is the one that I know the best. I don't have a great depth of knowledge about a lot of other cultures. Um, but um, but I think that there are some challenges within, and it feels really challenging to be, a part of the people on the planet that are most privileged, but so lacking in so much and so overwhelmed by so much for so many reasons that actually I don't know. We might be privileged economically or at some level, but there are so many other things that are missing from our culture. This is, I
Yeah.
speak of my Western culture. So yeah, it's a challenging one. So pausing and just observing, noticing, what can I notice, and then feeling how it feels in our body. Like, what do I feel when I see this happening? We don't allow ourselves. We react with, you know, the stories that have been embedded by our culture, our upbringing, our and that causes us to react. Whereas when we stop and we observe and we actually see other things, and then we can feel other people's emotions. We can feel what's coming up for us, and we can ask ourselves, is that appropriate? Where's that coming from? And we can get curious about it. We don't
Mm.
have to react. And obviously, there's different layers of uh, th things that influence our responses, and we're all at different levels of I'm going to say evolution. Just and I think about it. I've got a 3.5-year-old, and I think about it a lot. In the same sort of context, and like, he'll quite categorically say something to me, be like, "This is how it is," and I know quite clearly that it's not, because I have a whole lot more years on the planet than he does. There's a lot of things I know that he doesn't, because he hasn't experienced them, he hasn't seen them, he hasn't learned them, and that actually that generalizes to everybody. There are
Hmm.
lots of things that lots of people haven't seen and experienced, and so um, we need to also consider that in our approach to this navigation of problem solving or human connection, just connecting with other
And
people, being together. Like, we need to learn how to be together again, and there are lots and lots of things that we need to consider in that process, um,
and that's
because
one
of
of the tricky
mm,
things, isn't it? That we want to honor experience, or verticality, or more depth versus less depth, or more wisdom versus less wisdom, and at the same time we don't want to dismiss anybody's contribution. So that's the
hopefully,
tricky balance we want to hold, no? But
yes,
I think
and
it
I
would be
think
good if you could tell us a little bit about how does this all show up in the work you're doing? Like make it very concrete in what are you doing? What are you
what am I
excited
doing?
about?
Oh, I just when people ask me that, so what are you doing? I work with people to make things better. Sometimes
Hmm.
I tell people I'm playing a real life game of Dungeons and Dragons, which is,
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of fun, right? Um,
yeah.
and and actually, interestingly, I read a description of Dungeons and Dragons somewhere along the line, and it was the most beautiful kind of description. I'm probably not going to be able to relay it word for word, but essentially, it said that you are on a quest to and it's like to get to the end, to get somewhere. But you go along and you collect, you know, other people, or other beings that
Mm,
have the strengths that you don't have, so that you
mm,
can be better together. And it was such a great metaphor for life. It's like, actually, you know what?
yeah.
None of us have got everything, and but together we've got everything. And so this, and just like what you're saying, is just because somebody is, not as educated as me, has less experience, like, and this is something that we see in relation to children a lot. Children are dismissed, their ideas and their thoughts, and they're just imagining things. It was like, actually, they're really good at coming up with stuff because they haven't actually had stories about rights and
Hmm.
wrongs, and pathways that are ideal or not, or what's okay in this setting and that setting. They haven't been kind of like conditioned by
Hmm.
yet entirely, and I think that they often come up with things that could be quite impactful and quite important. And I think, there's a few things in there. There is the first, when you listen, when you engage, when you connect with somebody. And I think that coming back to your question, human connection, I believe is at the core of change, of possibilities. And but and you value them. When you actually do that with somebody, they feel special.
Yeah.
They feel, when somebody feels seen, heard, and valued, they light up. They are open. They are way more happy to listen to
Hmm.
what you have to say, way more open
Hmm.
to exploring things with you, and so that connection piece is so valuable. And I mean, we see this across the board in so many different spaces, when somebody's having a real meltdown. And I like to just differentiate between, and I call it, you know, when somebody is over threshold, or when somebody has been triggered and they are actually in their, amygdala, the amygdala hijack, and it's, they're in fight or flight. There's not a lot of rationality in there, and there's actually not a lot of getting in, and there's quite a lot of this information in the toddler research.
Hmm.
When
Oh,
they're having a
yeah.
meltdown, you can't get in, so just hold space. Just
Hmm.
hold space. Just be there. Make sure they don't hurt anybody. Make sure they don't hurt anything. Make sure they don't break relationships and plants and bowls. And then, but then when you say, and you're warm, and you're like, I'm here with you, I'm here with you, they come back online. Their brain comes back, and they can access their cognitive. And this is not a toddler thing. This is a human thing, you know. And so when somebody is now, they've got access to their cognitive capacities, they just feel held when you are there
Hmm.
with them, and you are paying attention, and you are saying, I'm here with you. Hey, you look like you're having a hard time. You know, can I help you with that? Or, I'm here. Do you need something? Can I help you with something? And it changes how they experience what they're experiencing, and also how they feel about what they can do, and what other possibilities might, yeah, their openness to other possibilities is good. Whereas, if, and so often in our society, we just run people down. Oh, that guy's an asshole, driving that, crap. We just go off the handle. And it's like, do we know what's going on for that person?
Hmm. Hmm.
Do we know what
Hmm.
happened earlier in the day, or, on that phone call they've just come off? Or do we really know how they came to be in that state right now? And I mean, if we paused to consider that, and one of the pieces of work that I do is a workshop, that it's a Zoom workshop. So you basically come online with me online, and larger group of other people, and you go and sit somewhere, and you observe people, right? It's called connection exploration. And you observe people, and you basically, the first exercise is just to look at people and see if you can tell what state they're in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they in a hurry? And what is
Hmm.
it about them that tells you that? They're walking fast, they're, grumpy, they've got their head down, they're sad, they're crying, you know. And then we come back. So 10 minutes people get to spend observing people. And you'd be surprised at how many people just go, wow, I've never do that. And
Oh.
that knowledge, that watching people is empowering, enlightening, just really, don't even have the words. It's powerful for kind of thinking about where people are at. And then of course, they share all their observations, and everybody learns from everybody else's observations as well. Then the second exercise is, now just pick one person or two people, and write down for 10 minutes, write down all of the possible reasons that they could be in that state, right?
Mm.
And you could just keep writing all day, because there are so many
Yeah.
reasons. And you
Yeah.
actually don't know, with a stranger,
Yeah.
with somebody that's, or possibly even somebody you do know. There's lots of possibilities. And so you can't really come in with anything other than, hi, how you going? Or you can temper it. And so that's the third exercise is, okay, so now you know what state somebody's in, and all of the possible reasons that they could be in that state. Basically, you don't know what it is. If you had something important to say to them, how would you approach them? And each time, obviously, they come back and relay their observations, and it just shifts the way you think about engaging with people. And um, I feel like this is a really important piece that we need to be, a practice, a way of being together that really hold space for possibilities in people's lives and compassion for where they're at. Because when you start thinking about the possibilities, you do become compassionate. And I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective. But I don't think I think most humans at a core level, if they
Hmm.
thought somebody was having a hard time and they weren't going to be put at risk by engaging with them to help, would do that. That's what I
Yeah.
believe. There's a whole lot of other things on that are add on top of all of us that affect our ability to do that. And one is simply that we don't have any practices in our culture that actually do that. Imagine if that was the thing. And I mean, we talk about gratitude and practice of gratitude. If you sit down, you're grateful for what you have, and you all of a sudden it shifts how you are. You're like, oh wow,
Hmm.
there's so
Hmm.
many things in my life to be grateful for. We're so lucky. And it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
powerful for your well-being itself, and also for the way you engage with the rest of the world. And I think that energy shift is something that is a really important thing that hasn't really been, and I mean, I could, in what I've discovered, hasn't really been um, identified, valued, appreciated enough that actually, when we shift our energy, the impact of our engagement with the world shifts as well. When
Yeah.
like I make a habit of, if I have something, if I see somebody and there's something I go, oh wow, that's such a cool jersey that person's wearing, or like, wow, that person just looks really funky with those clothes on or whatever. I make a habit of telling them, because I'm like, it's not mine, it's theirs, and they should have it if I think it, right? So I would really like them. And when you
Yeah.
do that, and you see people just shift. And there's this one, I was just walking through a park one day, and this woman, she had this beautiful, like, kind of woolen, but colorful coat thing on it. And I had to walk across the park to go and say, hey, I just noticed your coat, and I just wanted to tell you it's amazing. And she just looked at me and she went, "Oh my God, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm going on a first date and I'm just like so nervous and I just really didn't know what to think about myself. And I
Mm.
thank you. You've just really made me feel so much better." And like it's so simple.
Yeah.
Like there's so much opportunity in human connection. And
Yeah.
when you don't know where somebody is in their world, um, that could be a lifesaver, to be honest. And I also have, in my exploration of wanting to make things better, because that's pretty much what I like to do with my life. I have done some free hugging events. I have free hugs t-shirts and I have free hug signs, and this was one back in New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand and I live in Australia. And I remember, and I hugged this woman, and she came out of the hug and she kind of had this blank look on my face, and she went, "Thank you. I really needed that." And I just went, "Oh, what is going on in her life?" I mean, I tear up just thinking about it, actually, because, we don't know what anybody else's struggles are. And
Yeah.
imagine, can you imagine what would happen if we came to each other with that kind of interest, curiosity, and compassion? What the energy amongst us would be if that's what
Yeah.
we did as a general rule. I'm not saying it's an easy easy thing to be achieving, but yeah. So that's some sort of concrete examples of the pieces that I think are really fundamental to shifting things, because I think we spend a lot of time in this. Well, this needs to change, and the politics needs to change, and the systems need to change, and that's all correct too. But what we can do, what every one of us can do, is change how we engage with the people in our lives, and um, there's so much possibility in that, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what I hear you say is that one of the components you see as a third attractor component is the our improvement of the way we relate to each other, and we perceive
Absolutely.
each other, and
Yep.
perceive what is happening in the other. And the better we perceive what is happening in the other, the better we can also help. We can be compassionate.
Yep.
We can help. We can be
Mm. But yeah,
what
I think
what. Yeah, what
Um,
does this do? I was curious when I hear your description. Is this also helping us to understand ourselves better? Is observation of others also then a
100%.
tool to better observe ourselves, or is it not automatically like this?
No, no, it totally, I think it totally is because when you hear other people's stories, then you can see that yours is completely different. And I mean, we live in
Mm,
our lives, right? We live in our
hmm.
lives. And so everything in our life is very normal and very, it's what happens. And we don't know how anybody else is experiencing anything. Even if you and I had the same experience at the same time, like we wouldn't be having the same experience. We would be,
Yeah,
and so when we hear somebody where somebody's at, or we get curious about and we ask questions, it shifts the way we see the things in our lives, and possibly reveals things that we didn't even know were there. I mean, you would have heard that, and I've actually heard in some of your conversations, heard somebody say, "Oh, it's just the water we're swimming in." Like the two
yeah, yeah,
little
yeah,
young fish
exactly.
were swimming along, and they saw, the older fish, and he said, "Hey, boys, how's the water?" And they looked at each other and they were like, "What's water?
Water. Yeah,
What's water?" And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like we really, and I think this is the other the zooming out is actually being able to zoom out of ourselves and go, what are the norms that I'm swimming in that possibly aren't even okay? Like, and the Western culture has a lot of those because people are doing jobs, work, engaging with businesses, buying products. We don't know the backstory at all of lots of these things, how they came to be, what the impact is, and I think that if we did, we'd be we are quite challenged by and I think at some level lots of people have this level of cognitive dissonance, which is like, I'm doing what everybody does, but it doesn't really feel that good. And I know there's some negative outcomes out there that I'm actually participating in. And I think this is a key piece. And I've heard in some of your conversations that you've had, this kind of reflection on, um, just like what is what is normal and how we sorry uh how we yeah how we reflect on it, and it's really uncomfortable, and I know, and we're not very good at engaging with discomfort. Once again, we don't have that part as a part of our practice and our culture to actually hold discomfort, death, difficulty, challenge, conflict. We're not good at it. So
yeah.
we
Well,
need
also
to
the
get better at
behavior
that.
where all the behavior where we contradict our deepest beliefs, no, like
Totally,
this,
exactly. But because because
and
because
we
it's
all do
normal.
it.
Because it's
Yeah,
normal. To be honest, it's actually really hard to live by your values if you have some that, like I'm trying not to consume as much, and I try not to throw things out, and then you just end up with a pile of stuff in your house, and you're like, well, what does this look like when there's millions of people doing it elsewhere?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but I think it's an important process, and it's definitely something that I think, if we're going to change things, that's something that would be really helpful. I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but but I'm trying to live by my values. I'm trying to do my best to live by my values where I can. And there are some structural limitations to that, in our cultures, depending on, you know, the lives that we lead and what's accessible to us. It's really difficult to go off grid and especially when we haven't got we didn't learn any of those skills. We've been learning a
yeah,
whole lot of
yeah,
different skills that are not putting us in a position where we are okay with being in nature, with not having as much stuff. We've become accustomed to all of the stuff and these things and the ways of being. And we are also not connecting the consequences of that with the reality of it. I
yeah,
used to
yeah.
be a zookeeper. I used to be a zookeeper once upon a time. I've had many past lives, and when good zoos, like there's a spectrum of zoos across the planet, and they're and in the fairly recent times, there've been some big changes. Like, oh, it's not
Mhm.
okay to exploit the animals like that. It's not okay to keep them in little cages like that. It's not okay. And I went to London Zoo to do some work experience, and I was like, it was quite confronting. They still have the original, cages that they literally just went out into the wild. They took an animal and they put it in a box and they were, let's look at it. Um, and then the animals died and they wondered why. It's like
Mhm.
so many
Yeah.
things, and so now there's obviously been a huge development in the industry and conservation and various other awareness about what will help an animal thrive or have an optimal life. And that essentially, zoos are taking animals. They're not taking them from the wild. Most of them are captive bred now, which is good. And they are a random set of animals from, a particular, possibly lots of different places, put
Mhm.
into one enclosure together, so into an artificial environment. And the key is, what do I do? What do we do as zookeepers to optimize their experience and their well-being? Because when I introduce a vet, when there's a problem, and that could be a social problem, it could be a health problem, when I introduce a vet or something to try and solve the problem, it undermines the whole thing. Like everything, the wheels can fall off entirely. So it's best to actually help them be living as naturally as they possibly could in that environment. So you have to give them, and there are standards. There are standards across the board, and husbandry manuals of all the animals. They need this, they need that. This is their social structure. We need to understand how they relate so that we can then watch for those relationships to emerge and then make sure that one's got enough food and that one's got enough food and that, this power play doesn't, stop that guy from getting enough food. And because once if we can do that, then everybody will be happy and healthy, right? And they'll engage with each other and they won't exhibit stereotypic behaviors, which, we've seen across the board, the swaying elephant in the corner. They are mentally unwell animals. Those animals that haven't
Mhm.
been given the things that they would have in their natural environment, and that is a key focus for zoos is to ensure the animals are able to exhibit their natural behaviors, that they have their appropriate social, you know, groups or and are able to do the things that they would normally do. Obviously, there's limitations to that, but if this culture, this world that we live in, particularly urban living, was a zoo enclosure for human animals, we would shut it down because we would consider it inhumane. And I mean, when you think about that, like it's pretty powerful. There are so many things that we do in our world that are not natural to us,
Mhm.
not good. And we wonder why we're getting sick. We wonder why we have mental health issues.
So what do
Um,
we need? Let's go into that. What do human beings need in a third attractor world, the world that we want to
Absolutely.
build? What
Well,
what are what are the basics?
I think it's it's difficult because we've done this, right? And I think um the reasons why we're in this predicament with so many challenges is history. Look, we evolved and somebody decided to then, create, they would make things, sell them, and then all of these structures and systems and empires and wars and power plays and religions have influenced our trajectory over thousands of years, right? So we're
Mhm.
now on the planet, probably for the first time, able to see everything, right? And that's really interesting. To be able to see it all and go, oh, it's all here with us. But actually to look at and know that we've come here because of these things. And our cultures and our systems have been developed because of where we were. Industrial revolution, great, make it more efficient. Oh, whoops. We broke that. And it's a human story, isn't it? We did this and then we
It's
broke that.
it's
And we did
it's
this.
even the story of evolution. It's always
Totally.
change, reaction and change and reaction and change. Yeah.
Yes, but it's accelerated, hasn't it? Like we've
Yeah,
accelerated it. and
absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
mean, to kind of, and I think this is another one of the reasons why it's important, it's another important point for consideration when we are thinking about why we're here and why people are doing what they're doing is, to be honest, nobody knows what's been in our food for the last 50 years. If you've been in a Western culture, in a Western world, there've been all sorts of things in the the food industry and capitalism and marketing that have told us stories about things that we've just believed are true and fine, and it's all just fine. And actually, it's not been fine at all.
Mm.
Processing food, increases of different, nutrients and, macronutrients that we don't need. And like we are living such an artificial life that it's that of course we're getting sick. And then, but of course, then we've got the medical industry that's going to patch the problems. And that's not the solution. We just got problem solution and we're not getting any better.
Yeah.
We're just digging a deeper hole, I think. And so I don't think, I think coming back to your question, I don't think you can say we can't go backwards. We're here with these problems. So, but
No,
what we
no,
can
but we can go forward, and I do think
Mm,
we can develop at least a vision or an idea what going forward could
yes,
look like. What are the components, like the elements of the future
yeah.
that we want to
Well,
be part of the big picture again? No.
yeah. Well, I think and I do think about what would be necessary across the board, what would be most helpful, and critical thinking. Like just asking yourself, where did this hamburger come from? How was it made? How were the animals treated? Where did it come from? What was it
Hmm.
fed? And like, is that actually okay for my body? I mean, we don't learn anything about our bodies. We don't learn anything about health, about how to look after ourselves really at any depth. Not certainly not the depth that gives us the ability to control it, because that's been outsourced to all of the experts, which we've recently found out possibly had agendas that weren't actually about our well-being. On many occasions, there are many or they believed that they were true when actually they weren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, it makes total sense. But I also want to say that's where I'm personally not sure if the bottom up approach alone helps. And let's take this example that you bring in, and which is a very good one, critical thinking. I don't believe that the change will come by everybody developing so much critical thinking that everybody can make their own good decisions. So
No,
in
no,
that
no.
sense, I still feel, I still have to hope that we can have experts or a culture of labeling things as healthy that is actually
Yeah.
true and healthy, that helps
Well,
people who don't have
mm,
the critical thinking themselves to make
100%.
decisions, like
Yep.
like
And
like to
mm,
change the way how food is presented and labeled, and
yeah,
so that people
absolutely.
actually have help when they
Totally.
cannot do their own research, because a lot of
Yep.
what people say I did my own research is also not really research.
No,
Is
no, no.
another way of avoiding truth, no.
Well, true, but the thing is that it's complicated because when you start to ask
Hmm.
questions, like I mean, it would be really simple for governments to go, okay, we're just going to ask for complete transparency with all of the businesses.
Yeah.
You have to tell us what are your manufacturing practices? What are you putting in and why? Like, imagine if we were asking businesses to actually go, how many employees do you have and how do you treat them? Like if
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
was on the table, we would all be able to make better decisions, but also the the healthy, the impact, the consequences of all of these things would become clearer, and people would make different decisions, and then they would be influencing their friends, and we would be able to make our own decisions because of our co collective knowledge, collective understanding. But none of us know that, and I think this is what one of the biggest problems is.
Hmm.
Everybody believes something's true, and other people believe something else is true about everything, about food, about climate, about
About everything,
calories,
yeah, yeah,
about
no.
yeah, and that means that we're not really getting anywhere even when we connect and actually try and talk about it. And then there's the problem that we can't really communicate anymore because we're doing it all through computers, and we're not encouraged to sit and explore together. Just sit and get curious like the kids are, hopefully until they get to school.
Or
Um,
we get together in our bubbles. That's
yeah,
another thing,
exactly.
no,
And
that
then
people
you've
are
got a
coming
limited set
together.
of
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But when you
limited.
come together in your own bubble, then it's just
Mm,
enforcing what you already believe, and that's also not
yes.
helpful to find real solutions.
No, and so yeah, coming back to this, well, what does that look like? And it's curiosity, it's curiosity and critical thinking. It's like, but we don't have a culture of supporting people to question. I've been a question asker for my entire life, and it has not been a popular way to be. No,
Hmm.
I'm right. No, this is the truth. no,
Mm.
don't tell me I'm wrong. I'm like, I'm not asking why you're doing that because I think you're wrong. I'm interested in how it works. I'm interested in how
Hmm.
you got
Hmm.
there. And I think the uncomfortable part of that is often that people don't know how they came to what they thought.
Yeah.
They do it because their mum told them to, or because their religion told them to, or
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
and they don't actually have any depth of evidence or knowledge. They might have trust or they might have belief. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but is it real? Do we really know? Is really the question that I ask about everything. Do we really know? You know, I don't think we do. And we're in this interesting time. We're starting to see the intersection of science and religion and spirituality and quantum physics and like this kind of like all these things that have been now we see, and there's the indigenous knowledge and how they engage with the world, and it's all kind of coming a little bit close together,
yeah. Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and it's tricky. It's all very tricky.
Yeah, it's very tricky because it's not yet
It
clear
is.
if it's really coming together or if people bring it together and create another
Ah,
construct that is,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, but I
So
think
that's into,
but
yeah,
holding, I think holding just holding that knowledge that we don't know is
yeah, yeah.
really is helpful, because when we go, and this has happened across history as well, we go blindly into something. This is the right answer. This is the solution. We're going to do this, and we don't even question it. We might make some progress. We might solve it for a period of time, but and heard, so I've been listening to this kind of meta-crisis conversations for quite some time, and listening to Daniel Schmachtenberger and various other people talking about it. And there was this one woman talking to Nate Hagans about climate, top climate scientists and stuff, and she said that she had met with this other climate guy, and she said, "Oh, just has anybody done like a bit of a breakdown on the economic outcomes of the like what is it, the climate, the shift in energy, so from fossil fuels to renewable energies.
Hmm.
Has anybody done the
Hmm.
costs on that?" And he went, surely somebody's done that, and he give me 2 days, came back, no, nobody's done it. So we're piling into these solutions often without knowing that they're actually sound, or knowing what the consequences of them might be. And I think this is that pause and zoom out, like, okay, right, if we did this, what would happen then? And I've heard people talk about, like we think about the number one consequence, but what about the second and third order consequences of the things? This is something that we have definitely have in history have not been very good at. Is like, if we change this, what else does it change? And that speaks to that emergence is like, actually, you need to wait and see what happens so that because you're not going to know until you actually do it, and that's going to
Yeah, yeah.
depend also. There you go.
But I want to zoom into one thing that you said, not to debunk your point, but I just realized how strongly we are conditioned also when it comes to financials. Because,
Mhm.
yes, it's an important question to find out what alternative energies would cost. But to be honest, when it goes, when it's about cost for wars, for weapons, everybody
Mhm.
seems to have all the money in the world to
Mhm.
throw out that money to create
Yep,
weapons to kill people.
doesn't make
When
any
it
sense.
comes to alternative energy, then the rationalists come in and say, yeah, but it costs a lot of money, and are we sure that it's really worth it? And it
Mm,
is. If it's
totally.
helping the planet, it is. So it's so interesting how this cultural conditioning, how we even rationalize things, is
Mm,
also conditioned, no? Like the
absolutely.
pause that you are advocating has
Totally.
has to be a pause of kind of everything. We have to
Yep.
rethink everything, and at the same time we have to be brave enough or courageous enough to try things moving forward, because if we only
Yep.
pause, then we have kind of standstill and nothing changes. So it's like
Yep.
this, questioning everything, but then also be brave enough to just move forward in a direction, and then see and steer and
Yep.
dynamically steer into the future.
Yep. And I think that one of the bits that we don't really do that well yet is because when you stop and you have a look and you're like, okay, so this looks like a good solution and it may have some positive outcomes, but we can see that there's going to be some other things that might occur in the future. And we've actually considered the possibilities. We can
Yeah,
shift the design, we can change
yeah,
things, right? But we can't. It's harder to go backwards and change it. And this is what we're dealing with now. We've got these systems that are like the education system. It's going to do this. It's not doing very well for the people. It's actually undoing our capacity. It's stopping
mm,
us from being curious and actually thinking about possibilities that are outside of it. And we don't question it because that's
yeah,
not a part of our story. And so, when we question things, we're not questioning them to judge them. We're questioning it to see if there might be something better. It's like, and I try to like just put it out there, like if you thought there could be a better way, wouldn't you want to know about it? Like,
mm,
wouldn't you want to know
yeah,
about
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Wouldn't what if you knew you could do something in a way that actually helped everybody in the setting, not just you? Wouldn't you do that? Like I would, And so
Yeah, you
the
would, and I would.
necessity.
But the people that are in charge that have something to lose if a new solution is coming up,
Mm,
they
yeah,
probably wouldn't. So
yeah,
we are in a whole system of power and
yes,
finance and money
totally.
that is often holding innovation back.
Yes, and so, but that's a very, very important point when we go, okay, right. Well, so we're trying to design solutions. So, what are the limitations of any system that we're working with, the big picture, of this setting that could influence or that will stop us. Um, and how do we work around it? I mean, humans are very good at that. Like
Mm.
there are laws, people get around them. Like they just get
Yeah,
innovative
yeah.
because necessity is the mother of all invention. If you it actually it depends on your well-being, depends on you getting food, and you don't have the money to get it, you'll find another way, right? And that isn't necessarily the most positive outcomes. It's not necessarily the most, you know,
Mm.
helpful pathways for everybody in the togetherness at all. But we really need to, I think this is a really important point you raise because we need to go, well, if those things that you've designed, like the welfare system, is supposed to be helping the people, but the people can't access it, or it's too complex, or some people are missing out, then we're going to create other problems. So we actually have to think about that when we're designing solutions and
Mm.
also when we are looking at what's impacting our ability to change things or create new solutions. But I feel like we can do it openly and I think this is coming back to this whole how do we approach things? It's like, hey, I'm not, and I think about this like right down to the human relating. Like I have ADHD. And now I often go into conversations going, hi guys, I've got ADHD. And I'm probably going to talk really fast and I probably will just like go deep into all these things. And I just want to tell you that because I really want you to have permission to help me help you if I'm going too fast, if like this is something about me that could be a limitation to our progress here. This is
Mhm.
something that may affect things, and I don't want it to be like that, but I might not notice that it is a problem for
Mhm.
you unless you tell me. So,
Mhm.
and that vulnerability, that openness to kind of like, well, just name my limitations. Like we don't talk about the limitations. We're all about selling the right thing and the bits of us that they're good and that will bring the change or will contribute positively, but we don't tell people about the hard stuff. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's a bit uncomfortable. And once again, and so the lowest common denominator, holding discomfort, holding space for it, because the other part that I think that is a really important consideration that is affecting everything is just the historical traumas, the depth of historical traumas that are living within our cultures, families, individuals, intergenerational traumas that affect our capacity to engage with anything, that our ability to be together, our ability to feel good about ourselves, and when we actually hear that, then we're going to do much better. There is the holding space there is the feeling safe. Do people feel safe? To be here. If I can tell you everything about me and I don't feel like I'm going to be judged, then I'm going to be able to bring more capacity here. If I'm fearful
Mhm.
because I'm a bit too much in most settings, I'm not going to be me. then I'm not gonna bring all of my me that could be really helpful. So you're
Hmm.
navigating that shifting of kind of like creating safe spaces where we can be together and hold complexity and challenge is a really important point, I think, if we're thinking about what are some key pieces that will shift things. And coming back to the work that you referred to, the work that I do, one of the things that I did a few years ago, I'm a problem solver. I'm like, okay, so I had some problems. I moved to Australia and I moved here to start my career as a vet. That was an interesting story, but for another time. And I busy and I lost my cat was one of the problems that I had. Took a day off work. I went and printed some flyers, walked around the neighborhood going, "Where's my cat?" Luckily, he had a really funny haircut because it was hot here, and I gave him a line clip because I was working at a vet clinic. Um, and so he was quite obvious. That was quite obviously him. And I sat on my couch afterwards, and I was like, "What if I never see him again? What if I don't actually find out where he went? What if my pieces of paper didn't go as far as he did, and he's somewhere in somebody's living room, and they don't know that he's missing from my house?" And I thought, it doesn't matter how many resources I have, doesn't matter how rich I am, how available I am. I need other people's eyes. I just need everybody else's eyes. I want to know what everybody else can see because they're going to see further than I am, right? So that was one of my problems. And the other one was that I like making things out of, building things. I don't have any skills, but I like doing it. And I like making things out of rubbish. Like just like, well, these things would be rubbish, but what if I could make something that I need out of it, which is closing the loop, living by my values, trying to.
Yeah.
Um, and I needed to cut some wood. And I went to Bunnings, which is a local hardware store here, bought a saw for $7. And I'm like, I didn't need a saw. I just needed the cut. I could have spent $7 on a meal for somebody, and the world doesn't need another saw. Like how many saws are going to be in hard and rubbish at some point in time? And there's probably about 50 saws within 200 meters of my house. I just need to find the saw, but we don't have a mechanism for that. So I started a Facebook group, and it was like designed to be a safe place to ask for help from your neighbors, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
so hey guys, just let's get together and just if you've got a problem, put it here and see if somebody else can solve it. I've got all these things. If I knew somebody needed my stuff, and I would just take it to them. But I don't know that they need it because we don't ask for what we need. We don't have a culture of asking for help.
Yeah.
And we also live in our little boxes by ourselves, struggling away. Social isolation is an increasing challenge because when we're by ourselves with our problems, they become bigger and then they become kind of like limiting. I'm like, I don't really want to tell people I've got these problems. I don't want to tell people I can't cope with this. I don't want to tell people it's hard and I'm struggling when I'm so lucky. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
internal thoughts because we're not living in community and seeing each other. Because if I saw somebody having a struggle across the village, I would
Yeah,
just
yeah,
go
yeah.
and help them. And I could tell by just looking, right? Whereas we don't see each other struggling until often it's way too late, and then we've got people shooting people. We've got if the wheels fall off, right? Because
Hmm.
the people have been spiraling. Um, so yeah. Anyway, this Good Karma Network is what I called it, the Kensington Good Karma Network, and I delivered little flyers around the neighborhood. And hey, let's just see if we can solve problems. And because it wasn't, there were four rules: no selling, no advertising, and no negativity. And anything that's given is offered is done so with no expectation of anything in return. So no, not transactional, right? If you can help, help. If you've got something an opinion about it, keep it to yourself. I don't
Hmm.
need to be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
managing people's opinions about right and wrong. I want people to just help if they can, and so we
Yeah.
can just help it. And what we saw, because it was visible to everybody. People would say, "Hey guys, I need some help with this," and somebody else would go, "Oh yeah, I know. Oh, I did that last week," or "Oh, my mum solved that problem." And then you
Hmm.
just see people sharing their life experience and their knowledge,
Hmm.
their skills, their resources, and it just became this beautiful, like people are just helping each other, and people would tell me that they would just sit there and watch people solve each other's problems, and it made them feel good. It made them
Yeah.
want to help people. It made them aware of the diversity of challenges, but also the sameness of some of the challenges that other people were
Yeah.
experiencing in houses just down the road from them. And there's a togetherness that happens when we share from that place of
Hmm.
vulnerability.
Hmm.
And because people weren't allowed to be negative, like judging, for me, it was. if people felt unsafe to share their challenge, then they would just not engage. They would just
Hmm.
go they would
Yeah,
wait in
yeah,
the
yeah.
house. And for me, it was most important for the most vulnerable people to be able to ask for help, um, not the people that had the biggest voices, who often end up
Hmm.
dominating these spaces because social media. It was 2016, so it was early days, early-ish days in social media, and um, yeah, people were being very negative, and people
Is
said,
it
"Oh,
still going?
it is." It's a very big journey. I so Kensington, it went really good, and then at the end of that year, so 2016, 2017, my 2-year veterinary career finished. And I'm very glad to say that the universe decided that it was better that I did other things. But the next month, people from around the country started to contact me and say, "Hey, I've heard about what's happening in Kensington. How do I start a good karma network in my suburb?" And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, sure. Yeah, here's the model. Let me help you. I've learned lots of things." Do, 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 do. Then there were 3 networks, then there were 9 networks. Then somebody in my network did an article in the newspaper, and it was national news, and it was in the Weekender, I think it was. And people started to just like contact me and go, "Oh, I want to start a good karma network." And so I was like, "Oh God, I probably need to find some resources, because if this is going to keep growing, I'm going to need to be able to support people, and I don't even know how that works. And I want to help. I want to help people. It's gone really well for the people in my community. It could probably go well elsewhere." Um, um, so I started a not-for-profit, got pro bono advice to get register as a charity, because I thought that I needed financial resources to help me with this. And I'm not the operations guy, I'm the ideas guy, but I was the only one doing anything. Obviously, each team had, like each community had a set of administrators that would
Hmm.
facilitate. But the interesting thing was, when I started to see people starting them, and they weren't working very well, I realized that people weren't thinking about it like I was. And I didn't know that I was thinking about it differently to how anybody else would. Once again,
Mm.
perspective shift, like, oh, I just thought other people would do the same thing. So I had to codify it
Mm.
and then write documents and essentially create a how-to guide. And I think I didn't ever want it to be like, I'm not going to tell you how to do things, but there are some key pieces that need to be a part of this for it to be
Mhm.
successful. If you let people do what they want to do, then it will change the culture. It will change the trajectory. People. I have had very I lost friends over it, in fact.
Oh, really?
People, well, this is my community group. I should be able to do this. I'm like, well, no, this is a safe place to ask for help from your neighbors. And if we change that purpose, then people will just take stuff and run with it. And then it'll be advertising, and they'll be like, oh, and people were like, oh, I just really want to give my services away. I'm like, no, you would like to market to the group because it's really engaged.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah,
being
yeah.
so kind and thinking about how you can leverage this for your own benefit. This is for the people don't that need help. It's not for the people
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
like to connect with the community. Um, so
yeah.
it developed and evolved, and like we started with 4 rules. We've now got 5 pages of it, but essentially it went for um, the not-for-profit ran for 8 years. So 2024, I closed it down because, yeah, basically I'd had a child. I was finding it difficult to be there and support. I was so over that time, probably about 60 groups started, and now there are still 32, I think, in action. But the other thing that
Mm.
changed is Facebook changed, and so that became a really big challenge. The groups got big, and we had other challenges, but I learned lots along the way. And yeah, it's the mechanism is still, I believe, and I, to be honest, I don't think that there is such a thing yet on the planet. And
I
there's a
would be
big
very
open market.
interested to see the rules that you develop, because here in Tiruvannamalai in India, where I live, we have these WhatsApp groups for HelpNet and TiruNet, and that are meant to help. And as you say, then all kind of things happening. Advertising is happening,
Mhm.
commenting on people's questions,
Yep.
inappropriate commenting on people's
Totally.
questions. Why would you even vaccinate
Yeah,
yourself or not
totally.
vaccinate, or
It's not
whatever?
helpful.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it,
but
it
there's
doesn't
clear
help anybody,
boundaries.
no? Yeah,
No, clear boundaries.
exactly.
And like I said, actually, in fact, um, there were people that took exception to the point of actually deciding to start an anti-good karma network series of groups. There was there are actual good karma networks, pretty good karma networks, fairly good karma networks, and one of the suburbs has a good karma network. And so for people that were like, those Nazis are running that group, it's like people really took exception to not being able to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
so they
exactly.
needed to do it somewhere else. And, you know, I'm not going to argue with them if they wanted to be more free. But
No.
it's, the first group actually was just, they just really wanted to bitch about me because I wasn't doing what they wanted to do and they just wanted to complain about me. But it was really interesting to sort of see just the way people came to it. The majority of people were really happy. Oh, you can't do that here?
Yeah,
Cool. I'm like, the internet is a big place. There are lots of places you
yeah,
can take your
you can
opinion. There
do
are
all
lots of
kind of
places you
things.
can behave like that. And people often said to me, how did you do it? Like, how did you stop people from, being nasty online? I'm like, I just told them it wasn't okay. And like I had to reduce it at some stage, like when people weren't really getting it to something that was easy to understand. And I would say to people, it's kind of like in most people's houses, you don't pee in the kitchen, because, this is a place where we ask for help and we help people and we stay
Mhm.
positive because that is most positively impactful.
Yeah,
I'm not saying negative stuff doesn't happen, but this is not a place for discussing it because
yeah,
the influence on the group and the culture would actually change people's feelings about who they are, where they are, what's going on in their lives, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it was very difficult to communicate all of that in the no, you can't. But
yeah, yeah.
usually, and I did the problem solving. I did most of the problem solving across most of the groups. If there were big challenges,
I
I'd be
just
like,
wanted to ask, were you the main moderator? Like, it sounds like you were the one that was moderating.
well, I'm moderated my group, and I was an admin on all the other groups
Yeah.
as just as a supporter. But it was very important to me that I wasn't the one doing it because I didn't have the
Mm,
capacity for it. I
mm,
and the empowerment model, and this is also another fundamental part of this new way of being together, if you like, is collective responsibility. You are not here to manage these people. You are here to share with them the purpose and the guidelines and invite them to do it with you because
mm,
every one of us needs to buy into this and
mm.
just understand that it is like that because we believe that this is the most positive outcomes that will come if we don't have negativity in here. And
Yeah,
nobody disagreed with most of them,
yeah, yeah,
only the ones who wanted to get something, wanted to use it for their own purposes,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not telling them they're wrong because society has told us to sell ourselves and promote. And interestingly, I mean, there are examples. There's a plumber on my network, and pretty early in the piece, I saw a lot of people just going, "Oh my God, if you need a plumber, see this guy. Call him. Here's his number. He's amazing. He just came around. He solved my problems. It was amazing." About 4 times in a month, and I rang him, and I was like, "Hi, Richard. It's Amy from the Kensington Good Karma Network here." And he's like, "Amy, I've been meaning to give you a call. How's it going?" I said, "Oh, how's it going for you?" And he said, "It's so busy." Oh, well, of course it is, Richard. You're looking after people, right? And he went, "What are you doing tonight?" And I went, "Oh, I'm just going to be at home." He said, "I'm coming around with some beers." You know, a beautiful, beautiful human arrived on my doorstep, 6 beers in his hand and a bottle of Moe. He hands me a bottle of Moe. Just like, I'm like, I mean, I don't drink champagne, but it was a very nice gesture. And then he sat on my couch and he explained to me, told me about his business and stuff. And he was like, I didn't know what was happening. And I asked this woman, how did she hear about me? And she said the Kensington Good Karma Network. And I said, what's that? um, and then I had to get my son to get me on Facebook and then find out what it was about. And, you know, and he said, I spend $300 on this marketing thing to get my business out there. And I probably get one lead a month. I haven't done anything here. And I'm
mm,
like, he single-handedly showed every business owner that the way that you get customers is looking after people,
mm,
and I
mm.
think we've lost that. I think this
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
back
yeah,
to the human relating and why it is so important to be full of integrity, to live your values, to be the best human you can be, and not leverage the corners the the shifts and things for your own benefit or
yeah, yeah.
to advance the thing that you're doing if it's not really aligned with the well-being of yourself, the people around you, because all of that has consequences. If we're looking after everybody, then it's probably going to all be okay. but we don't do that, as a general rule. So it ironically, it's kind of like coming back to ourselves and being in connection. And I think I've thought a lot about, you know, what would happen. And this is the evolution of my thought around this is that actually we need a social media platform that is ethical, that is trustworthy, that is focused on helping people and the planet thrive. That we can actually come to like talk together and like it's like crowdsourcing, like we go to the internet, people say, oh, you go and inquire about something and they go, oh, it's on the internet. The internet is a big place and you can spend hours trying to find the things and you won't find them, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so when you actually ask 10 people the same question,
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
get a line of truth through the middle of their experience, and then they'll see some variability on that's contextual, right? Or situational. And so actually human connection is very valuable for actually getting, if you can say zoomed out from it, not get lost in each one of their individual experiences, you can see that there are some that the answers are the best suggestion is usually clear, but you can also then evaluate whether it is appropriate for your setting,
Hmm.
because and that was another one of the things that was it difficult for people to deal with in these good karma networks was people would say, I need some help. And then they would get to choose which solution they went with. So some people would choose a business, some people would choose the lady down the road, some people would choose the most environmentally friendly and it didn't necessarily align with the person who offered the solution. And they, were like, why aren't they choosing my solution? But my solution's the best. And they weren't allowed to. I had a
Yeah,
doctor
yeah.
call me after there was a woman who posted um, hey guys, I've got sick about 4 times over the winter, and I'm just wondering, has anybody got any ideas about, boosting your immunity? And of course, we had everything under the sun, like Ayurvedic medicine and everything. Um, One person commented, "It's interesting that we've got to comment number 27 before somebody suggested getting a blood test." And and then this doctor contacted me and said, "Hi, I'm a doctor, and I'm just a bit concerned about this." This person's post because she's getting these suggestions of all this quack medicine. And I had to go back to him and say, with all due respect, Richard, while your, opinion might be the most evidence-based, the most, scientifically backed up, um, right opinion, it is still just your opinion. And we don't know this woman's context. We don't know why. We don't know what experience she's had with doctors in the past. We don't know what she's done. We don't know anything. We need to trust that she will choose the right solution for her and not tell her what to do, because then she will also need to take responsibility for the consequences of
For
that.
what she does. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I
True.
mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, some really interesting things happened that just really painted an interesting picture of how do we do that? This invitation, this not judging people for their question, for how they got there, the not telling people what to do, just letting them choose what's right for them, giving them the information and setting them free. It empowers people to actually take responsibility for what they're doing because a lot of us are just doing things because somebody else told us to do them. And so we can blame it on somebody else, not on ourselves, when things go pear-shaped. Um,
Yeah, but I also must say, just because you let people choose doesn't mean that they take responsibility. I mean, human beings are complex beings. And so many
Absolutely. No, no.
times people don't take responsibility for their own choices, and which would be a very important skill to learn, that you actually take responsibility for what you do.
Yeah, but it was definitely a part of our model was
Yeah,
so we want you to see all the different things and choose the one that's right for you. Um,
yeah,
and I, it's important that that you do take responsibility for that. We're not doing it for you. We're not telling you to do things. And maybe they'll do the learning, maybe they won't. And I think this is true
yeah,
to
yeah,
all of the suggestions of all of the evolutionary opportunities that we have, to
yeah,
evolve
yeah,
ourselves. Is actually and sometimes it takes 14 times before we go, oh, maybe I should stop doing that. You know,
yeah, yeah.
maybe I should choose
No,
something
that makes
different.
sense.
Mm.
I have one last question about that, and then I think we are coming to an end. Uh, did the social media engagement spill over into real life, into offline
Yeah, there was all
of
sorts
the
of
good karma
group
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, lots of groups were started and people started initiatives. There was one guy who started the Kensington Backyard Sessions, which was local musicians in local backyards, playing music. And so every month he had
Mm.
he'd get a local musician, somebody'd lend them their house, and so we'd sell tickets to,
Yeah. Yeah.
invite people to be there. And it was, yeah, great. So there was all sorts of things, but yeah, I mean, COVID obviously was an interesting time, but there was definitely great engagement. And actually, one of the other really great successes was the biggest morning tea was a initiative by the Cancer Council here to raise money. So they would say, "Hey, we've got the resources for you to share that you're going to have a morning tea, and you
Hmm.
have a morning tea to raise money." And one woman decided to do it through the Good Karma Network. Hey guys, I'd like to hold the biggest morning tea, and I wonder if anybody can help me. And it just turned into
Mm.
this epic like community event where we had
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
town hall was donated, and then local businesses donated things to sell for a silent auction, volunteers from across the neighborhood, and she raised like $9,000 the first year, 10,000 the second year, and I think 11, yeah, the next year. Like it was amazing, but everybody brought their little bit. And so nobody
Hmm.
was really put out because
Hmm.
everybody contributed a little bit and a lot was created. And so that collective, opportunity of collective impact was really realized on a whole lot of settings. So it was such a multifactorial set of
Yeah.
benefits to the
Yeah.
community. And somebody said to me one day, I think people have just got more friendly in the street since the Good Karma Network got started. They'd smile at
Ah.
each other because they're like, well, maybe I've seen you on the Good Karma Network. Oh, I know you. And so,
Oh, yeah. That's
it
interesting.
changed things for us. And I think
Yeah. Yeah.
there's this is another really important thing is like technology is great, but humans are great too. And we do need to find a balance. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's a challenge to figure out how to do that, but we need to be back in connection with each other. We really, really do.
Absolutely.
It's a really important thing, but that the mechanism of asking for help, I think, is a really, really good leveler. And it just means that we can solve our problems. And I think, one of the things that we talked about earlier that, is affecting our ability to move forward and actually start solving these problems is that we are dealing with lots of people that are suffering the consequences of the systems that we have had. So we've got, addiction, we've
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
domestic violence, we've got so much. People are unwell, and that we need to um, hold space for that, if you like. We need to um, find a way to build people's capacity. If people are so over, like, just overwhelmed by life, they're not going to be able to participate in solutions. They're not going to be able to contribute, be able to. And so, if we can find a way to help each other, just solve some of those things, just make life a little bit easier, then we're going to do better at actually going, well, okay, so now I'm feeling a bit better, then, and you're
Mhm.
feeling better, and we're all feeling a bit better. Maybe we could tackle this bigger problem in our community.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we've all got the opportunity to do that. Every one of us has
Mhm.
got the opportunity to change things for the better for somebody else. So what if our narrative was, how could I get my needs met by helping other people get their needs met? Or what if I could get my needs met by helping other people get their needs met?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then more needs would be met rather than us all trying to get our own needs met and having the scarcity mindset around there not being enough and competition being so embedded in our society that we're like, why does somebody else have to lose because I win? I
Mhm.
don't even like I don't
Mhm.
like that. I don't want to win over
Mhm.
somebody else. I'd like us all to win. Because we'll
Yep.
all do better. You look at you know, crime. It's people are not doing well, negative consequences for everybody.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't hurt them, it hurts everybody. So could we change the way we think about how we're being together and help people to shift? And I know that sounds way more simple than it is, but if we
Yeah. But
change just our way of being with the other, with the people that are difficult for us, that would,
no, no. Like the whole mindset of win, win, win is. I mean, that's
yeah.
definitely a third attractor concept. I
It
totally
really
agree.
is. But
Yeah.
I don't know why it isn't our kind of our go-to. There's a multi-solving institute in the States. I've been interested in watching what they're doing, like multiple. solving multiple problems at one time rather than these single solutions. That's a good way of thinking about, can we
Hmm.
solve more than one problem?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
could we
yeah,
solve a problem for more than one set of people rather than this is just for toddlers? No, what about a human thing? Why don't we
yeah,
generalize it to
yeah, yeah,
humans and humanity? Because there are so many differences, but there's also, we're all human, right?
yeah.
Which is, yeah, the
We are.
concept for the Hey Humans, this social media platform that I am dreaming up. And I'm really interested in talking to people. And this is sort of how I found myself here is like, who are the people who I know the pieces of the complexity
Yeah.
because I can't design it. I can't do it by myself. None of us can do anything by ourselves.
No, no.
We'll do everything better with
Yeah,
everybody else, particularly those people that know all the
yeah, yeah.
pieces of the puzzle.
So true. Thank you
A
so
lot.
much, Amy. That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry for, raving. I've got ADHD and it's a bit much sometimes, but yeah,
No, no,
I
all
think
good.
I feel so grateful that you are exploring this from so many different perspectives. Because when you zoom out and you hear all the different lenses, you can see the lenses and you can also see
Yeah,
those
exactly.
limitations, and that's the place that we are most well positioned
Yeah, yeah,
to design solutions. And like I said, there isn't one solution. There's so many things that need to be done. It does needs to be
yeah,
top down, bottom up. It needs to invite everybody, but not everybody can participate. So we need to be able to provide the opportunity for everybody to engage where they are, and also be seen in whatever they're dealing with.
yeah.
Like that's the vision I have, and I've heard it in your conversations as well as others. That we I think somebody said we need a new religion, and I'm like, the word is not going to go down well. Like
No,
if you want everybody to buy
but
in, you can't use that word, but we need a new culture. People talk about a new culture. It's like, well, what is that? What is this?
yeah,
And
or
I
a
do
new
know.
narrative. I can go with
Yes,
narrative or big
narrative.
story. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But we get to design it. Like, what would it be if we could make
yeah,
anything?
yeah, yeah,
What would we be? And I think that if we actually invited everybody, they'd probably say the same thing. We'd like to be having a good time. We'd like everybody to be okay.
yeah,
We'd like to not be so stressed. you
yeah.
know.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's hope
You're
for the
doing some
best.
great stuff.
Thank you so much.